course, we started with the Imperial March. That was this one's idea. Welcome to Covendom. My name is Levi Rowland. This is Brian Cain. We are a weekly occult podcast and webcast that you can view on Facebook Live, on YouTube, and through Crowdcast. If you want to watch us on Crowdcast, where you can interact with us, ask questions, sort of be a part of the show, it's crowdcast.io/hexeducation. And if you're watching us from there, don't forget to sign up through Crowdcast so you can get notifications. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. So today's topic is labels in witchcraft. So we're going to be talking about how do we describe ourselves, what words do people use, and who can lay claim to them.
But first, let's pull the weekly tarot, shall we?
Yes, let's find out what the cards.
Let's find out what the rest of the night's going to be like.
So, God, it's not going to be good. I brought a very interesting tarot deck that I found at a weird witch shop locally. It is a metallic tarot. It's like Chinese metallic tarot. So all of the descriptors of the cards are in Chinese. It's very shiny. It's very nice. But we'll give it a good mix. Give it a cut, Ryan.
I forgot the knock.
We forgot the knocks. It's very important. So today's tarot card is the Ace of Cups, right? It'd be the Ace of Hearts if it was a poker deck. It's the Chalice. Love, right? Love, communion with God, pacifism, perfection, beauty. What a good card. So if you're watching, you want to call that person up or reply to that guy on Grindr, do it. Do it. God wants you to. So, labels in witchcraft. So we're going to start.
We'll do show and tell first.
Oh, show and tell. Yes, yes, yes.
Show or tell. So far, we've been doing all show. We'll have some stuff to tell eventually.
Yeah. We lead boring lives. Maybe we don't have any real stories. I don't know. No, I brought a book this week. Last week, if you remember, Brian brought the Marziano Tarot to share with people. This week, I thought we'd do a book review. So not really a review, but it's a recent book that just came out this year, very recently. It's from Oxford Press, and it's called Soldier, Priest, and God. And it is a new biography of Alexander the Great that focuses on him as a religious figure. So the author of it is a professor of history at UNC Chapel Hill. And he also, it was funny because he used to be a motorman in the New York subway, but he got his PhD in history. But it focuses heavily on the rites and rituals that made Alexander the Great pharaoh, and also his role in Babylon and the other places that were part of his empire. And it focuses very heavily on him as a religious figure and the spread of Hellenism as an organized sort of pagan religion, and the mystery cults too, and all of that. So very, very interesting thing that just came out. Excited about it. Got a lot of interesting reviews because it's a part of his life people don't focus on.
Blessed be. Exciting. Yeah, exciting. I actually had a couple of things I wanted to share too. This is a lotus wand that was made in Salem, Massachusetts, that's actually used here in the temple in Hex, New Orleans, the temple to Isis in Hex, New Orleans. It was created by a member of the Golden Dawn. I obtained it from David Newman's shop in Salem, Massachusetts, the Hermetic Art Learning Center. Hopefully I got that right. Fantastic store. David, was a little... Isis is often depicted with a lotus wand. Of course, it wouldn't have been colored like this. These are the zodiac symbols, or zodiac colors, not symbols. The zodiac colors, and it's a system that the Golden Dawn has combined with this ancient Egyptian idea. The lotus wands they have found in Egypt, I believe, were often made of ivory, the ones that survived, because wood wouldn't have, would it? So it's a very sacred one. So I dedicate it to Isis, and we use it in the rituals here. Wands are typically used as an instrument of prayer and invocation. So I like the idea that since this temple was specifically dedicated to her, so if you're looking for some high-end ritual supplies in ceremonial magic or Golden Dawn, it's one of the best places to go. And David Newman is a magician that I highly respect for his knowledge and his craftsmanship. Unfortunately, I can't remember the member of the artisan who created that, because it wasn't David, but he would know who it is. The other thing I wanted to share with you is an Alexandrian trade secret.
Uh-oh.
These are called wine wipes.
Oh my God.
And if you drink red wine, I suggest that you get some, and especially if you go out. I always have them with me when I go out and I know I'm going to be drinking red wine or doing a show like this, because so
keep them teeth white.
Basically just takes the purple right on off. My wedding would have been very different if I would have known about
this. This is how you hide your drinking problem from your family. He's not wrong.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Still,
We have more buttons now, if anybody's wondering. Very happy about
comments.
the Sith ones.
I am going to try. You'll see, it's not working for me to look. What am I doing wrong?
There you go.
Oh, here we go.
Let's turn it on.
Okay. So
Every
I
time.
am trying to monitor the Facebook questions,
And I've got YouTube.
and then
YouTube's not working.
YouTube's not working. He said.
We're not broadcasting on YouTube, but there's some people on there. So if you post questions, they will still.
We will
receive.
get the video put up there. I don't know what's going on wrong there.
And good evening to everybody saying hello in chat on Crowdcast. We see you. Thank you for joining us.
Crowdcast is, what we're directly putting this through, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to monitor any Facebook questions. If you want to call in video-wise for questions at some point this evening, you would have to go through Crowdcast. And we haven't actually had a video caller because we know we've got to see you, and that's probably intimidating for some people. But we'll always offer to take in a couple calls if we don't have video guests, which so far we're not actually scheduling any guests. I've got one idea, but it's not really our main thing. I've done that before with Hex Education, and it's extremely taxing to try to get some of these people to
We'll make it work.
not be annoying. And besides, we're
Wow.
so entertaining all of on our own that I don't really know that
I'm
we
trying.
need anyone. Maybe after
It's
the
been a
first
long
season,
day.
we'll be like, we don't have anything else to say. I don't know. We'll think about it. So today's topics.
Yes, labels. We're going to talk about labels. And I thought to begin with, we would do something kind of interesting. We have lists of words that have been used to describe magical people throughout the years, throughout the centuries, things that are really popular right now, kind of in the zeitgeist, things that might have kind of fallen out of favor. And we're going to give a little Caesar thumbs up or thumbs down for each one between the two of us. As to
Whether we use
Yeah.
them or not for ourselves.
would you describe yourself as this
And then we're going to
word?
explain why after
Yep.
each one. Right?
Just give a short, kind of quick, because I'm sure in the questions we'll get more in depth about.
But I want to say something about the show first
Of
as
course.
well. We don't know where the conversations are going to lead, because the thing about labels is you're going through. First of all, we need to recognize something as a broader occult world. I don't like the word community and things like that because it's really inaccurate. We're a bunch of individual things that sort of get lumped together
herding cats,
in an
yeah.
umbrella, and we don't agree, and half the time we don't like each other.
Not the church.
We're independent and we're in different traditions, and there's a lot of things going on there. There really isn't a universal definition for a lot of these words, and most of these groups are not using the dictionary. So they're using counterculture vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
And ourselves included on some level, we're using some esoteric counterculture, though I do think our group does focus a little bit more on the history. I very much try to, and knowledge of history will often alter not only my perceptions, but how I choose to speak for myself. It does matter to me. There's a little bit of reality when it comes to words, but we have to take counterculture into account. So the very first thing we'd say is, it's not about who's right and who's wrong when it comes to labels. I think it's really important to simply have an understanding of what one means. So I think it's more important when you're having a conversation to try to understand what the other person's saying and then explain what you're saying, and hopefully both people are listening. Often this isn't the case. Debate is only valuable when you're truly trying to educate each other, and perhaps through that knowledge, people might alter their perceptions. I have changed my vocabulary tremendously from when I first started the craft to the present day. It has altered based on information, initiations, training, and we don't, even among initiates, agree on everything. So, so this conversation tonight, I think, is really about communication and perception. And maybe, hopefully we can open up some minds about labels and bring some understanding as initiates of Alexandrian witchcraft, as occultists, why we sometimes make statements online that might not be understood by, the online pagan community, because they are coming from a counterculture vocabulary that was really Llewellyn based. And I'm not saying that as a dig, it just happens to be true. The early Llewellyn books in the 90s established a lot of vocabularies that are still being used today. Scott Cunningham had more to do with how people are speaking about modern witchcraft now than Gerald Gardner did.
He did.
So we need to understand that that's just, that's a product of how information was being distributed at one point in time. It's changed now. It's changing how information is being distributed. didn't see Facebook last time, so I want to make a shout out to some people, and you can do those.
Yeah.
Hi, Brian. See you on there. I'm not going to try to say your last name. Flora, Chris, William, Bernadette. Got quite a few. They can hear me.
Oh, on YouTube?
Yeah.
No, this is on Facebook. I'm not monitoring YouTube.
Yeah, I've got YouTube open
And
just in
several
case.
others. If you ask questions on here, I'll try to catch them. I'm not as good as Levi, and we'll answer your questions as they come. Your questions are more important to us. If you're on Crowdcast, if you can actually send in a question, and Levi will get a cue that there's a question in the queue, so we'll know to stop and answer it. It's much easier that way. And we are going to invite video call-ons. If you choose to be one of our first, please keep it to a minimum of 2 questions, one for each of us, or
We can answer together
both of
either way.
us, and then we'll cut you off because we don't want to,
I love how he's already setting it up to be mean. He's like, just let me tell you real quick, you're not that important.
Well, you're not staying on the whole time.
I love how Brian's already setting like that. Those are our boundaries.
Yes,
you are not important.
You're not a guest. You're
welcome, but no.
well, I don't know if you're terribly interesting. You never know what could happen. But so why don't we go? Levi's got a little wordplay he started, and then I've got some I'm going to add on afterwards. And this is, I want people to understand, we're not saying we like or dislike these words. These are, would we describe ourselves?
Yeah.
Would we use this word to describe ourselves? And we'll give very brief explanations to why.
Because
Right?
the discussion I think will happen with people.
Yeah.
But I thought with this we could just give a brief like yes and here's why, or no and here's
Very
why.
quick, right?
Yep.
All right.
So the first ones are going to be easy, I think. I'm just going to say the word, thumbs up, thumbs down. Would you describe yourself as this? Witch. Yep. I mean, we're witches.
Yep, because we are.
We are. Our religion is witchcraft. I love the sort of rebellious nature of it. Big fan. Priest. Right? I'm a big believer. We are a priesthood.
We're servants.
We're servants, yeah. Pagan. This one, a little explanation probably is in order.
Well, I think I've said it a lot of times. I'm not trying to reconstruct a dead culture. I do not represent any culture. I look at witchcraft through the lens of as a mystery tradition, and it has more in common with the rites of Eleusis than it does, especially the witchcraft we practice, than it does the Celts or the Saxons or
something that's
or
specific.
even we're not trying to do that, and I do not associate myself with the modern social justice warrior pagan movement. I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with the occult, and it's
and that's not really a judgment.
not that I'm
it's just a
anti.
separation.
I'm not that person.
I wouldn't describe myself as a pagan for a lot of reasons, but mainly because of the way the word is used now. What most people who use that word, what they're doing is just really different than what I do. So
Yeah, we're not anti the word.
No, I'm not anti the word at all.
And in certain anthropophological conversations,
we
might use it, but
we are using pagan.
We don't
practice.
describe ourselves as pagans.
No. Okay. Here's a weird one that I just added, interestingly enough. Sorcerer. I wouldn't either.
I just don't. I actually love the word.
Yeah, great
I
word.
just don't use it.
It's very, it's too
It's
high
sexy.
fantasy.
Maybe if
it's
I
a
was
sexy
French.
word,
Yeah.
but it's too high fantasy. It sounds like something like a novel.
I
don't
prefer
know.
it to other words.
Yeah, I just don't.
I'd like to use it. I might be one.
But I feel like if you tell somebody you're a sorcerer, they're just gonna be like, okay, Jan, like, good for you. It just doesn't have, like, not a fan. Okay, shaman. Here, I have a weird one with this. No, I would not call myself that, but I do think one of my favorite authors is Carla Ginsberg when it comes to witchcraft, and he talks about witchcraft mythos in the medieval period and in the Renaissance period having a lot to do with European traditions that would be called, even though it's culturally appropriative because it's a Central Asian term, coming from shamanism. So I actually do think witchcraft is very shamanistic, but I wouldn't use the word either.
As an anthropological word, I have used it. I might use it in certain contexts.
But not as a self-descriptor.
No.
not as a self-descriptor.
I think the word was really overly used in the 90s.
I do too.
But I do use it in certain contexts. I can almost accept, one possible definition of witchcraft being European shamanism as a valid way of expressing it.
Yeah,
However, it's not really. First of all, it's not even a word that most people associate with Native American shamanism. It actually has. It's not.
It's Central Asian.
Yes,
Siberian,
it's an Asian word
yeah.
from Russia, really. Isn't it?
Not Siberia, I misspoke, but from that Central Asian region is where it originally
A very
comes from.
small group of people a long time ago, and because, well, we'll get to that. Keep going.
Okay, but it's one of those that I think is interesting. Magician. I'd use that term. I'd use the term magician.
I think it's more acceptable to us than sorcerer because it's so steeped in the occult, and we practice a lot of Alexandrians in particular are also ceremonial magicians. We do occult workings that are outside of the craft. We do not consider them the same thing. It's a confusing subject, really, to get into it, and I don't want to go too far. But
here's the reason I would use it. Because it became a word so entrenched in the modern revival of occultism with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
It doesn't sound as hokey to us.
And they didn't use the word like sorcerer.
But it's not my favorite word. I don't consider myself actually a magician. I consider myself a witch.
Same. I prefer the word witch.
I have used that word to describe myself, just not very frequently.
Same. But I would very much prefer the word witch. And I think we'll get into why later. Wiccan. No.
It's a fat word.
Wow. It's not, I mean...
Stop. Lucy, you're not on the show.
I cannot. It's not.
The N in what is now called Wicca, the N in that is a plural. It's so saying saying you're witchcraft or you're witches, if it was pronounced correctly, which I'm not going to go into that right now. It's really seldom used by most initiates.
It
does appear in a couple early writings, usually as a plural, but it really isn't how even initiates describe themselves. I don't want to spoil the, most initiates would say they're initiates of Wicca or they're initiates of the Wicca. They would not say they are Wiccans.
No.
However, the neo-pagan movement uses the word Wiccan quite a lot.
They do. And we're going to get into this in the show, so I'm not going to do it here. But I will say the whole dichotomy of witchcraft as a practice, Wicca as a religion, I totally don't believe it at all. I think it's a complete falsehood, and we'll talk about that in the show. So here's another one. Conjurer. It's a maybe, but mostly a no for me.
Once again, these words it's not because we don't like the words. I think especially here in New Orleans, because we have a huge conjure movement, which is just sort of a way of expressing folk magic in mostly southern states. We do conjure, obviously, just like we
conjure spirits,
sorceries.
Yeah. I'm a conjurer, yeah.
It's just not, no. I've never described myself as a conjurer.
I wouldn't either. Yeah. Warlock.
I have to.
I know you have to, but let's give a brief why.
It's not really, if you were going to give the top 3 words I use to describe myself, warlock is not one of them. However, I have used the word mostly because, as some of you may know, my husband is the world's most famous warlock. And so when we appear on media, sometimes when it's just the two of us, if I were to say I was a witch and he was a warlock, what am I saying? So I sort of had to accept that as a part of my life. I don't have a problem with the word. I think warlock's very sexy, and I think it has its own historical context. But no, it's not really one of my favorite words to use. It's not a part of the Alexandrian tradition to call ourselves warlocks. Not saying that initiates don't use the word warlock. It's just not a common word to be used. It's kind of on the same level as sorcerer to me. I like the word. I think it's sexy, but it's not really how I truly feel about myself. But I do use it, so I have to thumbs up that one.
Yeah,
now you.
Here's what I would say. I'm sure we might get into this in the show. The idea that warlock means traitor to the coven, or that it's a put down, is completely ahistorical. It's a made up thing. It just means male witch in a lot of historical English-speaking
countries.
It's
Llewellyn counterculture.
Yeah, they made that up. That whole mythology that a warlock was somebody who committed treason to a coven is mythology. It's just not true.
It's not even an initiate. It's not initiate information.
No, it's a warlock just a male witch.
It's Llewellyn.
Here's why I don't use it. I don't use the word warlock for the same reason I don't use the word sorcerer. Words get taken over and used in specific ways. Witch is used in fantasy and magical realism and TV shows and whatever, but there's still a religious sort of thing to that. Warlock and sorcerer belong now, in some ways, not always, to role-playing games. When I hear the word warlock...
To counter that there, though, that would have once been true of the word witch.
True. No, because you always had poetry and mysticism around it, and you had, the witch trials and whatnot. But the word warlock, to me, the first thing that pops into my head is Dungeons and Dragons or World of Warcraft. Like,
you
that's the
obviously
first
never
thing.
Well, it is in World of Warcraft.
Exactly. They're it's like warlocks. It's the first thing that pops in my head is
it feels too
I'm a
fantasy.
level 42 warlock. It's like witch doesn't do that for me, but warlock makes me feel like I should roll a d20. You know what I mean? Like, no judgment, but okay. I think that's all of my major ones.
All right, let's see what I have.
Brian got some of the weird
here.
ones. I'm gonna pour some more wine. Just saying.
Spiritual.
No. I hate that word. I'm spiritual, not religious.
I hate that so
much. You mean
much.
not committed? You mean bored? Like, I hate that word. There's a rabbi in Los Angeles who wrote a beautiful article one time called Stop Being Spiritual, Be Religious. And it was about the people who say, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. It's basically just egotism. It's just a Western white lady way of saying, like, I don't want to do any work, but I want to, like, own some crystals.
Why you got to be hating on Western white ladies?
Lots of reasons. They know what they did.
Cult.
Cult, big fan. We are in a cult.
We are in a cult. I think a lot of people get really weirded out by that because it reminds them of like David Koresh or Branch Davidian cults or whatever. We are a part of it. I mean, witchcraft to us, through our lens of witchcraft, is a mystery priesthood, a mystery cult, and a fertility cult. So we are a cult. We're global. We've got initiates around the world. We don't really consider ourselves. We are a religion, but cult is more tight knit.
It is. It's like within a bigger framework, we are this thing, right? Kind of like in the Roman religion, you had the cult of, Diana and Orisha, or if you're
the religion of witchcraft has a few cults in it. Yeah,
exactly, and we're one cult within that.
Let's see, what else do I have?
You got a cheat sheet.
Wizards.
No. Again,
sorry, Oberon.
No judgment, but it's 100% the same as Warlock. It makes me think of World of Warcraft. It makes me think of Dungeons and Dragons. Like, roll a d4, what's your damage?
I don't mind the word wizard. Well, I don't mind any of these words, but no. I've never called myself a wizard.
No, immediately it's Harry Potter.
Light worker. This has
Never.
been on the Facebook.
Oh my God,
so
never.
Light worker.
You don't know the power of the dark side.
No.
What the hell is a light worker? I don't even know.
Oh, we're going to get
somebody with
explanations.
Crystals?
Please don't send explanations. I believe you.
Is it crystals in it?
No,
I
it's
don't
working
know.
with auras and energy and all that, which we all do, but don't call
Is it Reiki? Is that what it is?
No, maybe.
Are they Reikiing you?
Probably.
Empath. Don't get mad, Katina.
No.
Empath. I don't like the word empath.
No.
You explain.
I'm not a fan of it because I think it's one of those things where it's like, if you're an empath, you're like, I just feel other people's emotions a lot. Yeah, empathy, if you don't feel empathy, you know what that makes you? It doesn't make you not an empath. It makes you a sociopath, honey. Like the opposite.
Maybe that's what's wrong with me. I'm a
like,
sociopath.
I can't feel what other people feel. That's psychopathy. So I don't think we need a word for I can feel what other people feel. You should.
I'm just going to leave that alone now. Occultist.
Yeah,
of
course.
course. Big fan.
Of course,
big fan.
love the Western occult tradition.
It's my three favorite words are witch, priest, and occultist. Four would be initiate, but occultist is one of my favorites. That encompasses so many things, and it says something about you. You'll never an occultist dress like this. We all know what the park pagans dress like.
Why does it always got to be this with him?
Occultists might have money.
Wow.
Have you ever really met an extremely wealthy pagan? I mean,
yes.
You have. Besides, well, I'm not one.
I don't know.
Do you even know any wealthy people
who use that word? I mean, what about that guy? Some of them in history.
What is it like to be poor?
All the romantics. Who
How does it feel to be poor?
I'm not doing this with him. I'm not doing this. I refuse this horrible
Honey, what does
capitalist
it feel like to be a poor
garbage.
person?
Like if you're a pagan and you like it, good for you.
I am not a capitalist. I'm a member of the aristocracy.
Sir, you're not. He's from. You know what? I'm not even going to go
Stop.
into
Be
this.
quiet.
He's not blue-blooded.
Actually, I am, and I can prove it.
Ancestry.com records don't matter in
There
court.
is a book written that was called The 5 Royal Families of the United States, and mine is one of them.
Yeah, we never had a royal family. It doesn't matter.
Well, that's because we left the country. Otherwise, who knows who I could be now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
This is delusion on such a level.
Magus.
Okay, this one's tricky because it means something specific to us. It can.
Yeah.
And so I would use it if it was an
It's another word for magician, isn't it?
Yeah, but in our cult.
But did you thumbs up and down it? I have to thumbs up.
I would too, because
used in the right context, most witches would not go around calling themselves a magus. It's a reserved as an honorary title for certain male elders.
Yeah, exactly. So,
heathen.
This one I can't answer with a simple thumbs up or thumbs down. If it was, can say no now, like absolutely no now, because of it means it has come to become almost synonymous
with heathenist.
Also true. But I am from Appalachia, and so we use that word all the time as heathen, wicked, unchristian. So in that sense, hell yes. But nowadays it's so associated with also true and Norse paganism that no, I wouldn't use it now.
Right, old religion.
Sure. It's so tongue-in-cheek at this point, though, because we know that in the ancient days of 1952. So
I really can't give an honest thumbs up or down on this one myself, because under the right context, you know, there are references to it even in Italian. However, they used to call the Catholics the old religion in England, you know, so it's been used before to describe other religions. So, you know, which old religion? I don't consider, the reason it was used in witchcraft, and this has been a case in point for attack at times, is that we're the oldest religion in the world. Well, we're not the oldest religion in the world. We worship the oldest gods in the world. Does that make us the oldest religion? I don't know. So I don't know. I don't tend to use that so much anymore. I did when I was younger. So I don't know. Earth-based religion.
Yes, in context. In very specific ways, I would call our religion earth-based.
Thumbs down that.
But not regularly.
To be contrary. I don't think witchcraft is originally an earth-based religion. I don't think the early movement was really that focused on that. We are a nature religion, a fertility cult. I think that the environmental awareness that has come in, I think that the powers that be definitely have a hand in that. And I think it's a very big reincarnation. So in that sense, we've become an earth-based religion. However, I'm not sure I know what that means. It might mean fat people in a park. I'm not sure.
Enough with the fat people, Deborah. Do you know why I think I would use it now? Is because of how important I think environmentalism is moving forward.
It is. And I think our religion is a huge contributor to that. I just had to be a bit contrary.
Sure, I get why, but I would use it now just because I think we need to.
Satanist.
I want to say yes so bad, but I'm going to get in trouble, so I'm sorry, Daddy. No, I'm not a Satanist.
I don't believe witches believe in Satan. Devil worshipper.
Speak for yourself.
Devil worshipper.
Devil worshipper, hell yeah, all the way.
There is an aspect of the devil that is very much linked to the god of the witches. Most of us believe that there were points in history where...
Cast you out! Unclean spirit! In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ!
We really shouldn't be doing a show like this together. Initiates are never going to speak to us again.
It's fine.
It's fine. We believe there's a context in which the old god of witches may have been called a devil, and we think there is a different attribute to that. In fact, Alexander wrote about this in his lectures, that our god at one point in history was called the devil, and that perhaps he'd bring that back. You know, he was being a bit.
But we're going to do a whole show on that.
Yes. Green witch.
No. What does that even mean?
Red witch. Blue witch.
Blue witch.
Yellow witch. Brian, you'll like this one or not like it quite a lot. Traditional witch.
Oh shit.
First of all.
Yeah. I mean, I am.
I think it means something different to us.
It does.
And this could be a topic all on its own. In fact, I do plan on making it a show at some point in time. For some people, traditional witch is a way of describing folk witchcraft that is, you know,
not us.
That's centered on trial records, that's centered on, you know, can't even call them historical records because it's what some woman said while she was being tortured, right? So folk magic, things like that. So they're trying to center their practice around that. In most cases, it still is borrowing from the witchcraft revival, meaning Gardnerian Alexandrian witchcraft. A lot of the early ones, you know, they would replace, you know, the god and the goddess with, you know, the horned one or the devil and the queen of Elflame or the lady of the moon. The rose by any other name is still a rose. I think that there's a lot of commonality there. I think the big misunderstanding is the fact that Gardnerians and Alexandrians also draw heavily upon all of those same sources. Yeah. And most of the folk magic that you find, including the use of the stang, is something we've been actually doing from the very beginning, and it's been published about from the very beginning. So there really isn't a huge divide, as one might say. No. Originally speaking, traditional witchcraft came out as a way of describing initiates. Yep. And later on, people started shifting that to Wicca, particularly in Britain, because there was no competition for that word, and there was a competition for the word witch. You know, different evolution. Here in the United States, because there were so few initiates, that you had a competition for both. And more non-initiates used the phrase Wicca because of Scott Cunningham and that movement than initiates in our country. So it's really a cultural context. I mean, in truth, the word witch and Wicca were first used by Gardnerians and Alexandrians.
Yeah.
And then traditional witch was a way of saying, well, these people are initiated into one of the formal traditions. Later on, it started becoming, even in England, a way of saying somebody was supposed to be practicing that older form, not the witchcraft Gerald Gardner made up.
We were Wicca and they were something else.
The problem is it just doesn't add up in history.
And
there's no one who was doing that.
And what they're mad about and what they're attacking is so weird to me sometimes, because they call themselves traditional witches, and a lot of people in that movement call themselves traditional witchcraft because they don't want to be a form of witchcraft that they think we practice and we don't. So they're really attacking the 1990s neo-pagan.
They're attacking the part.
Yeah, the witchcraft movement that we never did. And then they'll look at me and be like, well, I don't do that light, fluffy. And I'm like, what? Like, we don't do any of that either. Some of the things that they tell me that I do, I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about. So it's weird.
Yeah, it is weird. I think that initiates have more in common with the people who identify as trial record witches.
Yeah.
We have more in common with them than we do
Pagans.
with neo-paganism or neo-Wicca.
Agreed.
Which I should have put, let's throw that in there, neo-Wicca.
Yeah, no, obviously no. There is no.
Oh, for myself. No.
No, Deborah.
Sorry, I got confused. Sorry. I like the words. I don't use it for myself, obviously. There was an initiate who did a video. And I don't know any initiates who use that word. I actually know a few who do. And the reason why is because it's a way of explaining that there is a new way of using that word, a new branch. Yeah. But once again, this is labels evolving sometimes unnecessarily.
So, if you don't have any more
black magic.
No, I don't get that.
We get it. We just don't use it.
Yeah, and also, that's a whole complicated debate about whether or not that's even something.
We would call that the gods no longer like you.
Yeah, there you go. So we do have questions. So I know you've been patiently waiting. Somebody, and I think this is Mary's question that I really like. Mary's asking, is there an umbrella term for non-Abrahamic faiths? And here's the thing, from an anthropological point of view, this is where the word pagan gets used.
Sometimes.
But it's very problematic because it feels wrong to call a Hindu a pagan. But by that definition of non-Abrahamic, they are. But are they? And then there's also we mean pre-Christian or pre-Abrahamic polytheistic religion. Well, okay, what about the Neoplatonists? They weren't really polytheistic, and neither were the Pythagoreans and whatnot. So do they count? Or the Zoroastrians?
I'm fairly sure Buddhists probably do not like being called pagans.
Yeah, and neither do Zoroastrians, and they are monotheistic. So I don't know.
This question here is comes from the fact that in the West, our vocabulary, including in the dictionary, is very much based on colonization. You know, the British Empire is the largest empire the world has ever known, much larger than most people realize. It far surpasses Rome, far surpasses Genghis Khan, far surpasses all of those ancient empires that we think were so big. The British Empire was huge.
India, Canada, Australia.
So, and it was an empire. It was not a democracy at that point in time. So, that's why English is the dominant language on Earth today. And it is the reason why words like pagan or witch are used in the way they are today, is because this is the dominant language. So in an anthropological sense, there was a time period in which that word was used to describe any non-Christian, but you must realize this is coming from 1930 Christian anthropologists who made that the thing. What does the word pagan actually mean? It was actually, I believe, originated in Latin, or became popular in Latin.
Paganus.
And it was an insult word used by the Romans to describe people who were not educated and did not
Rustic.
bathe. Mm-hmm. We would interpret that as country folk.
Hillbilly, like in modern English.
It was not denoting a religion at all. So
it became that.
It evolved into
the
that.
Christians started saying the pagan.
Anything that was pre-Christian was pagan.
Yeah,
so there is a historical context to use it. The reason we don't use it that way is because we're actually not trying to say we're pre-Christian. We're not trying to say we are the Celts or we're the Saxons or we're the Romans or the Greeks or the Egyptians. We might have a thing for many of these cultures. We might draw from them in our magics. But we are Americans, and we are initiates of a mystery cult the idea of that is, and the philosophies, rituals, and the magics therein are indeed pre-Christian. However, the gods are indeed pre-Christian, but we think, through the modern lens, most people who are calling themselves pagan are either trying to express that they're an earth-based spirituality with no actual context, or they're trying to reconstruct a pre-Christian peoples. And we're not trying to do either of those things.
And I don't think we need it.
No.
I think the question comes from a place of Christian privilege, where why do we need a word to describe that which is not Abrahamic? And first of all, they would have, in historical context, they called Muslims heathens. They called Muslims, pagans and heathens and all those things. So now that we include Islam within the Abrahamic umbrella, it wasn't always. And they called them Turks, or they called them pagans, even if they weren't Turkish. It was just one of those things. So I don't think we need it.
I've got a couple comments on Facebook, and since I didn't see them last week, I want to bring those up.
Of course.
We've got Jim. Jim says they see families performing folk magic and ways and call it witchcraft when it's anything but. That wasn't really a question. I thought that was a question.
I get that.
There is a kind of a question coming up here. Folk magic itself, and actually this goes along with Brian says, we answer these all the time. Brian says, agreed. I'd say folk magic is separate from witchcraft, though I may be wrong. I would say I agree. Folk magic is, here's the thing. Folk magic derived from pre-Christian religion. There's no doubt about it. All magic derived from pre-Christian religion. So that's where we get sort of into the, there may be folk spells, especially in places in Britain, that may actually be from pre-Christian religion in Britain. The people that may have been described as witches. That's debatable. But, but magic in itself and witchcraft are separate things. Witchcraft has always historically been something you had to, it was religious in nature.
It was religious.
Whether
always.
You were worshiping the old gods, fairies, demons, the devil,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it was, there was always a component, even when the label was misused, that's the one commonality, is that there's some sort of other force that you're reaching out to, that you're communing with, making pacts with, which pacts and initiations are essentially the same thing. That you're working out this sort of system with this higher power, whereas magic does not necessarily have to have anything to do with any religion whatsoever.
No, Christians practice magic.
Yes.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I have a very specific opinion about this, and it's not always a popular one. The word witchcraft meant something extraordinarily particular at one point, and now it does not. People use the word witchcraft as a synonym for anyone who practices magic. That is not what it
That
meant.
comes from colonization.
Kind of.
And the dictionary.
But if you read the
Substance
original,
baneful, doesn't it? Yeah.
If you read the original source documents from that time period, and I highly recommend, there's some books I could highly recommend, like for example, Witchcraft in Europe. I think Peters is the editor of that one. Levick has a great book on source documents. Those source documents are written by bishops and inquisitors and clergymen. And when they call somebody a magician, or if they're writing in Latin, a magus or whatever, that was not going to get you burned. It might get you some heavy penances, and they made people like Agrippa recant, after his fourth book of occult philosophy is where he recants it all. You could get in a lot of trouble, right? But they're not going to burn you. If they thought you were a witch, it was over, and it meant something very different. It didn't mean that you were just doing spells. It meant that you had made a pact with either the devil or Diana, which to the Christians would have been the same thing. You went outside of the church, right? So I do think it is religious, which was a religious term. You committed a religious crime. You were treated like a heretic.
Well, that's actually interesting thing comes to mind about the word warlock, the whole betrayal idea.
Yeah.
There is actually, God, I messed this up. I think it's warloga, the warloga, or something like that.
Yeah, the oathbreaker.
Scottish word that does mean betrayer, oathbreaker, which is where some people get this.
To the church.
Well, that's the point Christian made, is it doesn't actually specify what to, and why would Christians be persecuting someone that betrayed their coven? Christians were, it was a man who had betrayed God.
Yeah, you betrayed
the
your
church.
baptismal vows.
So they were betrayers because they had, it was a word for a witch in Scotland in
It's the
particular. It was very
baptismal
popular.
oath. Do you renounce Satan?
So they were betraying the Christian God. Is what they were really betraying.
Exactly.
So yes, a most heinous crime a man could commit. Women were considered fragile, so they were considered more prone to the sin of witchcraft. When a man did it, it was even more egregious.
Because he had went. But the word witch always had this weird religious connotation when it was used, beneficus in Latin or whatever. When you were calling somebody that, you were saying that they had done something in a religious context.
I've got another question, but I think yours was longer there first.
We do have another question from Bex. Let me click it first. What about individuals that identify as witches without being dedicated to an initiatory path? So basically witches who are not Alexandrian, Gardnerian,
Well,
all the other
that's
ones.
kind of what we were saying in the beginning of this show. We're talking about all these different labels, right? So for me personally, we've got the origins of the word witch. What do they mean? We don't really know. Most people, witch is an English word. Let's get that straight out of the bag. It's an English word. It's not even an Old English word, because that's where we get Wicca, which is pronounced incorrectly. It would have been pronounced Wicca, which was a male witch, and Witche was a female witch, and Witchian was the plural. This is where we get our modern mispronounced words Wicca and Wiccan. They're being mispronounced. They are Old English. They're not Saxon. They're Old English, which is connected to it, but it's not Germanic. Yes, it's not Germanic. So it takes on a whole new context. We don't know who those people were or what they were doing that were using those words. Those were not Christian words. There is a definite historical context, and you may disagree because you are actually a linguist. There's a definite possibility that those words were used by pre-Christian peoples or people surviving in the beginning of Christianity.
That's a possible thing. I agree with that.
But the word witch definitely was something that evolved within Christianity being the dominant thing. That does not mean there was not elements of pre-Christian religion, but we just really don't know for a fact. So there's a matter of debate there. So there's those people. They died. Just like Druids all died.
Yeah.
We don't know where the New Force came from, but I think most of us believe in a sense that something was passed on. It may have been more akin to traditional folk magic and occultists who believed very heavily in reincarnation and channeling. Spiritualism was a very big thing at the time. Many of them believed they were reincarnations of witches and they were being channeled this information. I mean, I'm speculating just as much as anyone else is. And this opens up a whole new box. But the gentleman on here said something that goes along with that question, so I can kill two birds with one stone. He said, can we perhaps describe this as a non-Christian rather than pre-Christian? Absolutely.
Yes.
Very accurate, and his very accurate way of describing that, because the witchcraft that I'm practicing is in itself not necessarily pre-Christian.
No, it's not.
Elements of it, however, are. Elements of occultism, elements of the gods I'm worshiping, elements of the rituals I'm performing are absolutely pre-Christian or possibly pre-Christian. There are a lot of things we do, we just don't really know the origins. And we're intelligent enough to be able to say, we don't know how old this is, but it's older than any of us. Other things we can actually dissect, and we can find it all the way back to ancient Egypt, being spoken about in the Book of the Dead, or Books of the Dead, or papyruses, or old grimoires. There are elements of what we do that is very old. So some of it is, without a doubt, pre-Christian, what we're doing.
Yeah.
But as a cult, as Alexandrians or Gardnerians, I think we are not pre-Christian as a cult. We are reincarnations of mystery cults. All of the Western cult traditions are, whether you're talking about the OTO, the Golden Dawn, Masons, Gardnerians, Alexandrians, all the ones I'm missing.
The whole big thing, yep.
We are all connected to that revival of Western occultism and initiation within the West. We are actually all literally connected, like all those traditions.
So incestuous.
They are all actually connected. Yeah. And the modern Druid orders, the ones from Stonehenge, not the Reconstructionists. They are, because they're branched out of Masonry. We're all connected. Our initiations are all connected. It's all this sort of fabric reincarnation, which I believe comes through Neoplatonism.
Yeah.
And secret societies that existed among, and everyone's going to hate this, the wealthy. I don't think it was something that was, folk magic was passed on through farming communities, the
agricultural cycle.
Yes, and I think some amount of witchcraft may have been as well.
A lot of it was.
But I think that the higher end occult learning that survived and that we are practicing today was kept alive in wealthy families who were unlikely to be persecuted.
Well, they could read too.
And they could read. And they had, they had castles and things like that where they could hide temples.
Yeah, and also, again, books. Like, you had to be able to read the books and Latin and Greek.
Books are good. Now, who do I think is responsible for the horseshoe still being hung over the door? Oral tradition.
Yeah.
That's
people.
Oral tradition. That is,
folk. Folk
and
magic.
it probably does come from ancient witchcraft. It probably comes from the horse cult.
But I'm a big, here's something that I want to say that is, I think people are going to think is weird. If there was no Christianity, there'd be no witchcraft. Witchcraft is something that happens in a Christian context. It is the concept that something was kept and that you were rebelling against Christianity by keeping the old religion alive in some way, or by worshiping the devil. There was no concept. If we were in Eleusis, we would not be calling ourselves witches. We would just be calling ourselves initiates of the Eleusinian mysteries. Witchcraft exists in a Christian context only. Like our mythos, our mythology, the Sabbath, the devil, the horned god, the lady of the fae, all of this only comes through Christian conquest. The entire concept of the she being driven underground, the ancient gods become, the devils of the new. That is witchcraft. If you're talking about pre-Christian religion, it's not witchcraft. It's just paganism. It's just state cults and mystery cults and all of those things. It doesn't need witchcraft. Witchcraft comes along as a secret, that they're going to burn you if they find out you're doing this.
Now, I'm going to say that everything he said I agree with, but there is a thing here. As initiates, where do we want to exist? Where do we want to live? I think we're in a really remarkable time period now where Christianity is not in power like it once was.
True.
So we do not need to exist within the bounds of persecution. We do not need to exist in the bounds of rebellion. We're in a position now, and we do rebel, but we are in a position now that, not that I think witchcraft is ever going to become a world religion, but I think our magic can impact the world as a mystery cult. And
Yes.
I think we're in a position now where we can reclaim our pre-Christian glory. I think we are in a position now where the movements and the magics are continually gaining dominance and the old gods are returning. And so I don't think we need to exist in that state. I think we survived in that state. I think both Levi and I believe that some of the mystery cults did survive into Christianity. And I think that witchcraft is an echo of that. Whether or not you believe that they called themselves witches, or whether there really was a Dianic cult that was calling themselves witches in certain parts of the world, or whether they were just called that by the church. The word witch, its roots are pre-Christian. So there's that little crossroads there where we just really don't know. We don't really know.
Sure.
There are examples of the word witch being used by people in a positive way. There are examples of people, even, I think it was Dame Alice Kittler, if I'm saying it right, probably not. She was the Irish woman who was tried in the 1300s. And according to record, she was very defiant in the trials, and she said she was a witch, and she, was very descriptive, and she did not actually get persecuted. She escaped, and actually the last record of hers was she fled to England. She was wealthy. Now, some of her contemporaries were executed, but she was able to get out because she was very defiant. There are examples of people who, who said, fuck you, I am a witch.
Well,
so
where I'm from in Eastern Kentucky, he swore, big damn deal.
We're going to get kicked off the BBC, everyone. Sorry. Last episode.
Always thinks he's British.
I am British.
He's not.
I'm American, but I'm British.
Of course you are.
Have another cherry.
So, have another cherry. In where I'm from in Appalachia in Eastern Kentucky, in particular, where my family's from for a long time, the word witch is not negative. It was used to describe water witchers, people who could find wells and stuff with dowsing rods. I had family members who were called witches, but they weren't. I'm not claiming any nonsense genealogical history of witchcraft, I promise.
Calvin said, hello, king and queens. Pretty sure I'm the king.
He wishes. Look at this queen, please. But no, it just meant...
I could make you a king.
That's creepy. Just saying.
Make a big flower wreath, put it around your head.
Yeah, you know why that's
Slaughter
creepy?
you like a...
I was about to say, we kill kings in my religion, so it's not a compliment. We kill kings in our religion.
Well,
where I'm from, for example, you could be the deacon of the local United Baptist Church in Eastern Kentucky and be a water witcher on the side. So.
How does someone let us know if they want to be a
They can say it in chat or put in a question.
If anyone wants to do a video call and ask questions and, be with us here, you're more than welcome to let us know.
Which one of us is the queen? Girl, both. Let's be honest.
There is a woman in I can't remember her name, Ginny, I think it is. She's a little Thai woman. And every year she sees me and Christian in October and she says, oh, it's King and the Queen of the Witches.
I'm not comfortable with the accent. I'm not going to lie.
This is how she sounds.
I'm not going to lie.
I am the king. Christian's the queen. She's
not totally
very
comfortable
clear.
with the accent.
Oh, you the queen, Christian. You're so pretty.
We're still doing it. We're still doing it.
She talks
Okay,
like
we
that.
do have a question from Lisa.
He's far too politically correct for the Alexandrian tradition.
Trying to move this on. What about the term, Lisa asks, magical practitioner? I love that term.
Great term.
Perfect. That describes anybody who practices any form of magic. I love that term. If you're going to use the word witch, I think you better be talking about somebody who has some sort of religious aspect to it.
The only difference between, Lisa, a magic practitioner and an occultist is an occultist sort of denotes that you're studying a lot of different fields within magic, but that's what an occultist is they're a magical practitioner.
Yeah, and it's the occult
and they're trying
tradition.
to penetrate the secrets of magic.
That which was hidden beneath the standard.
That's
love that term, Lisa. Actually, I think that is the big difference that we have a lot with this discussion is witch is religious. Like when I see these blogs where it's like, I'm an atheist and a witch, that makes no sense to me because historically that wouldn't have made any sense.
You can't be an atheist and a witch and you cannot be a Christian and a witch.
I actually agree with that, and I know we're going to get a lot of hate for that, but
you're also you have to, like we're saying, labels.
You just be a magical practitioner.
You have to see that Levi and I look at witchcraft through the lens of it being a religion and a cult,
or religious even.
Yes, I could, I don't think Anton LaVey's Satanists were witches.
No,
however, they have more of a right to use it than some individuals, because there is somewhat of a historical context for it, right? They're using it through the lens of the church, and his whole movement was about,
I'm not a big fan of the church
sort of doing it. However, I don't know. But in the end of the day, we don't really care what labels anyone uses.
No, be free to call yourself whatever you want.
This show is not about us saying what labels you should use, or I just say educate yourself. Put it in a bit of a historical context, actually research it, look at counterculture. Don't think just because 90% of the people on the internet are saying Wicca is a religion and witchcraft is a practice, that doesn't make it
tell that to the church
true,
in the 14th
and it
century.
Doesn't make it historical, and it doesn't make it everyone's narrative. You can adapt that if you choose to, and that's fine. I have a conversation with people all the time where I realize that's their narrative, and I think, well, I know what they're saying, and I understand.
You know what we say to some people?
You don't even exist to me.
No, I don't
think I'm the mean one this episode.
I'm the mean one. Yeah. No,
he's getting power hungry.
Have you met her? Like,
no one has met me.
What does that even mean?
Except Hexfest people.
I don't know what that means. No, I think witchcraft is inherently spiritual, inherently religious. I don't think that it's not something that just means magical. If it did, they would have burned
Katina's being
people
far
for
too
it.
quiet. Is she still not on here?
Katina, are you with us?
I don't know. I think Greg's still on there. She might have wanted to wait. I was trying to get her to call in.
Oh, there she's here. Hey, girl.
Yes. Remember, we're having call-ins, Katina.
So here's
Hope you put those rollers in this morning, girl.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I did have some questions that I wanted to bring. If anybody has any, please interrupt me, bring up questions, send them in through Crowdcast, through the chat, YouTube, any of those areas. But when it comes to sort of public versus private labels, are there certain labels that you really only use between you and your gods, or between you and your coven, or between you and people that matter to you that you don't use publicly, or are you just completely open?
I'd have to say on that, I'm completely open. If I did have labels I used, I wouldn't be able to talk about it anyway, would I?
Well, I mean, you could just say you had them.
Yes. It'd be boring, though, wouldn't it? No.
Painful.
Not very
What's your
original.
favorite private label? Daddy.
I don't have a private
He
label.
shushed me. There's some truth there that just came out.
I don't have private
Much
labels.
too vulgar display of power.
I think that my favorite words, like I said, are initiate, occultist, witch, and priest. Initiate explains my level of commitment Witch explains my spirit, or lack thereof. Occultist explains my need for power, right? And
Okay.
priest explains my servitude.
I like that.
So those are my favorite words. I like lots of other words, but I do prefer to keep it simple, you know.
So somebody said on chat, I cannot be comfortable either with the term Christian witch, and I agree with that. It's an
Can't be.
oxymoron.
I know there's a whole
I'm
lot
sorry.
of people out there who are using the term now, and the problem with it is it's not that we're persecuting you. Feel
No.
free, booze.
Call
If you
yourself
want to
whatever
be
you
a
want.
Christian witch, feel completely free to call yourself that. That's fine.
Look at how this is, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but look how this is written.
What's the call-in number?
You have to
How do you
it through
call in? I don't
podcast.
know. We explain it.
If you want to do a video call, you would tell us that, and we would be able to invite you, but you would have to have your webcam and everything ready.
Katina, you have to go on to Crowdcast.
She's here.
Okay, so we'll tell her how to do it.
Well, she would have to have, let me see, because I could click her and bring her up if we want to do a video call in.
Oh, we just invite her now. Well, do it.
Invite Katina Smith.
Hope
Katina,
you got, it's going to come right on, babe, if you have your questions ready.
okay, she literally says, I don't have a cam, the FBI scares me.
Saying that online. You're saying on the air.
She is.
You have a cam. I've seen you on something before.
No. If she can't, then she can't.
Oh.
She says, let me plug in the headset.
No, you have to have a video. It's video
Yeah,
only.
yeah.
Sorry.
We'll
This
get
is a
you
full
later,
video
though,
call.
darling. We'll set
Yeah.
you up.
You can still ask questions on here.
Yeah, please feel free to ask questions.
These are my
She's
people.
like, you don't want to see me anyway. God bless her.
What is this? Naughty pie!
I don't know why that's appropriate. I
is
love
worked
Coven. I'm not mad about it. She literally says, I have
So
a
the word
cam
witch,
mask
let's
on.
talk about that because it's the most important word, right?
Is
Out
it?
of all, I think so.
Yeah.
For this call for us,
Mhm.
I'd say it's the most important word.
Yes.
When I first got into witchcraft, you know, all of the books I read
1971.
and all of I wasn't born yet. 1692. When I got into witchcraft in 1692, I definitely, you know, the movement was very specific even at that time. You know, it really, I think social media is what really brought out this huge change and all the misinformation in the ways that it's going on now, because you've got, unfortunately, having a keyboard or being on social media doesn't really mean anything. But in our society, it means quite a lot, which is why I encourage people who are initiates or people who've had training or people who've, you know, had occult accomplishments to utilize social media, because that is the main way whole generations are receiving their information. So if no one's doing it, it's one of the reasons why I do it. The alternative is that's going to become the dominant thing. And it's not a fear factor. I don't care. I don't think witchcraft is supposed to really be dominant, but I want to light the light. I want to light the beacon of light for those people out there who are really seeking the truth. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I do. You know, I'm not competing, you know, with that young girl, like I said last week, who had 60,000 YouTube followers. I don't know a witch that has 60,000 anything followers.
Not an issue.
No, I don't. Not
Maybe
on
a
any
couple,
social
but
media. Because
not.
the people who are going to her are not going for the truth. They're going
No.
for whatever other reason they're going.
It's always
But,
in our report.
You know, I encourage it. And we all are expressing ourselves that way these days. So I'm not saying other people shouldn't, but I think it's important that people who have the training and the knowledge and the access, you know, that's a huge thing. When we talk about initiation, a lot of times it's, you know, it's not that Levi's a complete snob. It's just that
What?
he realizes that not everyone has access to the information that we do.
Why am I a snob?
Well, I don't know, Blair.
Deborah. Karen.
I am definitely not with Karen. My best
Janine.
friend's Karen.
Oh, yeah, we love Karen. I think with the word witch, it is naturally a rebellious word because of the history, and that's good. The true initiator is always the adversary. So, you know, I do believe that wholeheartedly. So I get why people want to use it as a rebellion and they don't want to tie it to some sort of rule-based path or a
Well,
path.
here's the thing, though.
I get that.
Rebellion can be a noble thing unto itself. You have to realize
It needs a purpose, though.
when the witchcraft revival was starting to spring into action in the 1930s, and I mean that historically, we know it really didn't come into fruition until the 1950s. However, we can trace it back to the 1930s now.
Yeah.
There's tons of evidence. There's absolute evidence that the New Forest Covenant existed. It's where they came from. That's what's not clear, and that's always the problem. Like who's before that? Who's before that? It's never. Eventually you're not going to be able to answer that question. I think what's important is that there is a living legacy that's working on being 100 years old. That's gone all over the world. That's magic. And if something works as an occultist, you pay attention to it. You don't pay attention to the thing that's not working. You pay attention to the thing that is working. It's like if you do a spell and it don't work, you probably don't do that spell again. But if you do a spell and it works, you probably do that spell again. That's just kind of how magic works. So, I think it's really important to realize that worshiping a goddess was and is an act of rebellion.
It is in a misogynistic world.
Most of this world is male dominated now. Given power to a goddess, recognizing that old ancient thing. It doesn't have to be spooky and dark and, nor are we trying to be a bunch of lesbians on the street.
Why does it always go to this?
That's not the point. But it is an act of rebellion. These people doing that in the 1950s, women had no power. And, they really didn't. They had more power in the West than in other places even then, but they were not by any means even on the standing they are today. So giving women equal prominence and making them sometimes leaders of groups and the nudity involved and the scourging and the goddess and a god that quite resembled what the Christians called the devil, and he was sexual and he was free and he was dark and he was foreboding. All of these things were quite in line with a rebellion, not only to Christianity, but to the social norms. And they still are. All of those things are. Why do you think there's so many pagans? Oh, I don't want to get naked. And tying people up and scourging them is so abusive. Oh my God.
It's lost the rebellion.
Well, it hasn't lost its rebellion. Those people have never been part of it.
Given it up,
we still are. There's times when we've done some things that creeped ourselves out.
Big fan. Wait, do I still have the? No, I agree. Rebellion just for the sake of it, I'm not really here for.
We're definitely not.
For a purpose. Right?
Let's use blood in our rituals, and
just for shits and giggles.
Get some dead bones and kill a chicken, and I don't know, be all worship the devil. I think it's, I'm not saying don't do what you do, you boo, whatever that is. It's just, I think that Levi loves the vibration of the medieval Sabbath.
I do.
And we have another priest within our group that at one point in time said, and it was a very good point, he said, if you were someone living in the Dark Ages, and you were in the woods, and you walked in and you saw a Gardnerian or you saw an Alexandrian ritual, you would instantly know they were witches. Just based on
it's
what's going on there.
Mythos.
You would have seen all of the components that you would have instantly known these people are witches. So it's not really that far removed. The difference is, however, is that there is a component to us that is hearkening to the mystery cults, and we're not afraid of being educated.
Office.
We're not afraid of being powerful, and we're not afraid of moving forward. We're not afraid of being beautiful. I think it's a big mistake to.
He's afraid of being pretty.
Just a lot of people are afraid of being pretty. Why do you think those people layer themselves with so much obesity?
I can't. I just can't with
It
this.
is a psychological.
I'm not doing this.
It's a psychological.
Look at you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
You fat dog,
It is a
apparently.
psychological thing. A lot of times because some women who are sexually
We're not doing
abused,
this. We're not doing this. Nope. Shut it down. Nope. I reject this in the name of.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
No.
Okay, we'll move on from
You're
that.
making a good point, though, that I actually agree with, which is this. And, maybe I'll expand. Maybe you won't agree with me. Brian and I have very particular beliefs that we've talked about in Private One about the historicity of the witch
We used to
cult.
be fat ourselves, mostly him.
Let it
Mostly
go
him.
about the fat thing. like, God in hell. Enough.
This is supposed to be Christian show. I'm turning into Christian.
Jesus.
I am not against.
How quaint. Even the rabble.
No.
I'm not against. I'm not attacking fat people.
You
I have
are.
Lots of fat people in my life. But I just. I don't, or a few. No, it's not at all. It's just, I think there's a point to it. Do you know in
I'm so
England,
triggered.
my spiritual homeland of England, they
I'm gonna eat an
are
apple
very
after
mean
this.
about that sort of thing. Stop eating things with corn syrup in them. It will literally change your
I
life.
feel like we went to a weird place.
Corn syrup is in all of our. It's illegal in Britain.
It's turned
Corn
into
syrup
food
is
aid.
not allowed in food.
No,
And it's in almost every.
No,
No,
it's not
it
illegal.
is illegal.
Corn
It
syrup is not illegal.
It is
the
illegal in
UK.
Britain. Yes, it is.
British
Look it
people,
up on your phone.
I don't believe this for a damn second. First of all, you
I'm
can
sure
get Coke.
someone told me
you
it
can
was.
get Coca-Cola in England. and
Well,
it's
somebody
corn
verified that on Google, but I think it is.
syrup. I know you go there a lot on the astral and in real life too, on
I
really
go
nice
there.
planes.
Yes.
But okay, back to the frickin' point.
I think Val told me it was illegal.
She's wrong. Back to the friggin' point. Something that you're saying that I actually agree with, in a way, and maybe, well, let me say it first and I'll see what you think. But Brian and I have had a lot of conversations about the historicity of the witch mythos, right? Like Margaret Murray and have we went too far against her, even though we know she wasn't right? Have we went too far in that direction?
I wouldn't say she's not right. I'd say that
Oh, I would definitely say on some things she's dead wrong.
some things she's dead wrong, and those things are what people want to hang on to.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think that if she could if she was around now and could re-articulate her work, I think it would probably be much better.
Yeah.
But I think her general hypothesis, basically how I see it, I'm interrupting you.
You're
so
fine,
I'll
you're
hold
fine.
on to that. If,
I get your point.
I think that her general hypothesis was supposed to be that she believed that the church's hysteria about witchcraft was connected to the survival of pagan religion.
Sure.
She just didn't articulate that in a very good way. I think what really debuffed her work were weird things like Joan of Arc was actually a witch.
Sure, but she also just made some
Yeah.
really bad, like, anthropological
Of course she
mistakes.
did.
that
But she was
we don't do
actually,
anymore.
here's the thing. She did, based on the current information. But the thing is, actually, as an Egyptologist, she was actually proclaimed. And some of her work is still
Oh, yeah,
very
they
famous
loved her
to this
Egyptology.
day. The problem is that she was also doing something. Let's think about this. She was going against the 1930s male Christian version of what a witch was.
Yes.
And so
Sexual
there was,
and-
so
yeah.
I think, her work was incredibly flawed, but I do think that there were aspects to it that were genius
Sure.
for the time.
Sure. But my bigger point here is this. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme because religions have a certain aspect of historicity to them. So, for example, if you're a Catholic, the concept of apostolic succession, I saw it.
Coca-Cola in England is made with sugar, not corn syrup, because it's illegal, darling.
It's not illegal.
illegal.
I don't believe that for a damn second.
Look it up. Is corn syrup illegal? Is it?
It's not illegal.
Told
it's
you.
under quota because
It's quoted.
Sure.
The demand
Not
is
illegal.
higher than the supply, so they try
Fine.
But not illegal. They're not banning. Anyway.
Well, they eat less of it, which is why they don't have fat people. Don't eat corn syrup, people.
So. Okay. I had a legitimate point. God damn
Right,
it.
go. I'm not being very noble, am
No,
I?
you're being fine.
I'm supposed to be the noble one.
In what world is that true?
In my mind.
Yeah, it's a vast one. So again, yes.
I think my
okay.
husband just said something very unpolite across the room. Don't know what it was.
No, he said it was cold.
Oh, my mind?
No. Oh, that is cold. That's very cold. Trust me.
I am the nicest boy any of you will ever meet.
None
Go.
of
What's
that
going
is
on?
true.
It is
None
true.
of that is true. But I went on a tangent. I'm so sorry.
No, I interrupted you.
So Gabitas also is very problematic. Bex is. I'll get to that in 1 second because that's a really good point.
The only
Question.
problem with the video, which I actually like, is that people don't want to call in because they don't want to have to be seen.
I know.
That's all right.
But anyway, what I was saying is historicity is important. So like to a Catholic, apostolic succession is important. Their whole faith couldn't function without that concept, that their apostles gave the truth to the bishop gave it to the bishop, it goes all the way
I
down.
think I lost everyone with the fat
But
persecution.
you did. We lost everyone. But
Sorry. Don't eat
aesthetics
corn
matter
syrup.
too. Aesthetics matter
Just trying
too.
to help humanity.
And so we're drawing more from that witch cult mythos aesthetically and spiritually and in a sort of poetic sense sometimes too. So whether or not it was perfectly historically accurate is not always important. What's important is that we understand, why are we drawn to that image? Why is the image of the witch powerful? Why does it still resonate? Why does the Sabbath seem beautiful?
I'm going to say something that supports a little bit of Mrs. Murray's work, even though that's not popular. If you look and you take the context of a witch's Sabbath, if you look at what the witch's Sabbath looked like, yes, a lot of it was heretical, but if you take that and then you mirror it to the recorded information we have involving the mystery cults, the cult of Dionysus or the cult of Isis,
Eleusis,
the cult of
the Bacchus
Diana,
mysteries,
which is that one's a little bit more foggy because it almost becomes Christianized. All of those things, if you really look at those rituals and the rituals that they did, or even if you go and you look at, and you can find these on YouTube today, and imagine what they were like hundreds of years ago. If you go and you look at the Krampus parades and festivals, they all look like they could be plucked right out of Witch's Sabbath. So were some of these ideas of the Witch's Sabbath coming from the fact that there were still people meeting and celebrating these ancient pre-Christian rites that, were scary to people who were superstitious and afraid of the devil? And so perhaps peeking in on a Welsh Bealtaine rite looked very satanic to somebody else, or some monk had traveled through and they're doing this thing tonight and
it looks like devil worship.
They don't know they're worshiping the devil, so I'm going to write it down this way. And it starts to become a mythos, and then that story gets told and retold, and eventually, that whole idea is born. The fact of the matter is we don't know, but what I can say for a fact is that there's a lot that goes bump in the night, and there are a lot of things that are hidden within the world that come to light at some point in time. And I know countless stories of families and places that have rituals that have been retained and passed on that do look like witchcraft.
Yeah.
So do I believe that there's any witchcraft families around now? No, not unless they're very wealthy. And if they are, they're not coming out of the closet. I think that it's, but that, once again, is what witchcraft is to you. And our earlier comment, I think we kind of stepped off of, is about the word witch.
Yeah.
My acceptable definitions of the word witch. An initiate of the modern witchcraft revival, meaning that you have to be Gardnerian or Alexandrian. I will accept Western European shamanism, someone who's trying to, sort of embrace
the mythos of
magical
witchcraft.
cultures within witchcraft. I think that's it.
Yeah, I would actually agree. I think here's where I think you're not a witch. I think it's much easier to do to be fancy here, an apophatic approach to it, meaning like what makes you not one versus what is one, because I think it's easier to say what I think is not witchcraft. Simply practicing magic to me is not witchcraft. That's magic. If it was just practicing magic, we wouldn't need the word witch. Everybody would just be a magician. Like we wouldn't have witchcraft. We'd just have magic. Why is it different? Because it has a religious connotation. So to me, there is no such thing as a secular humanist atheist witch. There's no such thing as a Christian witch. There's no such thing as a Hindu witch. Like witch is a specific sort of phenomenon that happens in European Christendom. And I think outside of that, the word is muddy and weird and kind of not very useful.
The problem with Christian witchcraft is you are taking two religions. And even though there are a lot of people out there who call themselves witches who don't consider it a religion, it is a religion.
It has a religious connotation,
not meaning
at least.
You are practicing it. That's not what we're trying to say. I think you can practice the religion of witchcraft without being initiates, because there's so much information out there now. You can worship our gods or try to. You can work our holidays or try to. It sounds horrible, but you may not be doing it the same way we're doing it, but you're doing it anyway. And you're practicing magic and you're encompassing basically what we believe. A lot of that was put out there and it has created other movements. Let's not be naive. Every modern aspect of witchcraft and paganism derives from Gerald Gardner. And it derives from the books that, well, they all do. Yeah. So it derives from the books that were written by the books that were written, it became non-initiate to a lot of people and people got other ideas, but you cannot find anything associated with witchcraft today that you will not find some element
seed in it. Yeah.
You'll find some element of
But
witchcraft.
I love how the traditional people who hate, because again, they don't know what we do a lot because they just
because they're not initiated and they hate that most of all.
And also they just don't know. And so like
It's an assumption.
they'll say things like, well, we don't do what you do. That's what people tell me sometimes.
Perhaps we worship a tin-titted goddess with horns and a gigantic phallus who beats those who do not properly pray. You don't know. You don't know us.
God.
Possible.
This is
I got a 10 tits and a cunt full of teeth.
okay. Get out.
You know what she did? Your canting daughter?
We do not worship that, by the
The fact
way.
that Christian's smiling means I've gone too far.
I love how I'm not allowed to say we worship the devil, but he gets to say that we worship this. Like, no, you don't get to speak. Like,
Lucy, you're not in the show.
like,
You know what she did?
yeah, I can't deal with this. No, but they tell me all the time, like, I get people who are really into traditional witchcraft, and they say to me, "We don't do what you Wiccans do." And I'm like,
We're not anti it. We're anti.
Like,
Here's the whole thing. I consider us to be a priesthood to the gods. You know, first and foremost, a priesthood of knowledge, a priesthood of the light. We're not a priesthood of humanity. We're simply not.
We're not a universal.
Other than knowledge, we're not a priesthood of a congregation. Most people within the pagan community actually hate initiates. And I do think they hate us on some level. I know you're like
You're
strong
having
words.
he's happy about this for some reason.
No, I do.
It's like he's looking for the right button. No, but I didn't finish my point. The point was, they tell me all the time, like,
The point is, in this whole wide, wicked world,
thank God for
the
American
only
Horror
thing
Story.
you have to be afraid of is me.
Thank
That
you.
was perfect because you were
Fiona.
just simply saying the point.
I know, right?
Perfect.
But no, they say me all the time, they'll be like, I don't do what you Wiccans do. Which, first of all, I'm not a
No,
Wiccan.
you don't.
You don't. And then, but here's the thing, they do. I'll be like, okay, well, what do you do? Well, I cast a circle and I worship a horned god. And I'm like, wonder where you got all that from. Like, it's like,
If you
please.
call it something else, it's all right.
It's anything just to not
Yeah.
be that. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't understand all of it. Why the drama? Just why do you care? Be you.
Labels are, a lot of people will say this. Labels are not important. Who cares about them? Well, they aren't important, but they are. It's the meaning behind them. It's the intent. So a lot of the things we're saying tonight is that, you know, I don't care if you call yourself a Christian witch. I'm not trying to step on anyone's
No.
spirituality. It's not something I can associate with witchcraft, nor if I was Christian, could I associate with Christianity, which I'm sure is quite problematic for people to do that. However, there are actually historical movements out there that, you know, like Gnosticism and things like that, that would be probably more in line with what you're feeling. You know, a mystical form of Christianity.
Yeah, esoteric Christianity is huge.
It just doesn't really fit
in the
in with
Western
witchcraft.
occult tradition.
I take that as somebody who finds witchcraft fascinating and they're just too freaking scared.
No, I mean, there's also Martinism and the esoteric orders of Christian, you know, occult traditions. They exist, and they're very
absolutely.
popular. Lots of Rosicrucian
and
orders.
Once
are very
again,
Christian.
fine.
Masonry
We are not
can
about
be.
telling people who can use the word witch and who cannot use the word witch.
I love what Lisa says. She
Simply
says, I think
pointing
a lot of
out,
these people were just turned down by
could I
covens.
answer that question?
Look, I love that. I think a lot of these people were just turned down by covens.
Lisa, there's a woman named Judica Isles. She's a member. Oh God, I said I wouldn't do that. Sorry, never mind.
No, we're not going to do that. We're not
Breaking
gonna do
my
that.
rules.
We have a
breaking my
new
rules.
question, and I'm going to
Never
ask
mind.
it.
You can all figure out the rest.
So, somebody did ask a question, Mary did. How does Italian witchcraft fit in with Gardnerian or Alexandrian traditions, or Russian traditions, or any of the other like traditions that have grown up in certain ethnic communities in Europe?
May I?
Absolutely.
Well, Russian traditions really don't. I don't have any bearing on that because the thing with Russian traditions is a lot of them are actually coming out of the closet right now because you know there's a lot of information we're getting from them now. Once again, to earlier the form of this, magic, folk magic, pre-Christian religions do not necessarily mean they're witchcraft unless you're going to follow the anthropological colonization definition that is very prevalent. So if you're following that definition, then all of these things are witchcraft.
Yeah.
But we're not. So, you know, Russia, I'm going to leave out of that. Strega, however, if we're going to use that word, it's a bit problematic here because Leland's work, is extremely important. And actually, it's important to Margaret Murray's hypothesis as well. There's an idea that there was a cult of Diana that existed within Christianity. And at the risk of sounding like a delusional fundamentalist, I think it did. I think that the church said it did. They called Diana the last goddess of the pagans.
The Dea Paganorum.
There's a lot of information out there that points to the fact that there was a cult of Diana. And personally, I think she had absorbed the cult of Isis, the cult of Dionysus,
Lady
and a
with
lot of
Fae,
other
she-
rural cults.
yeah.
I think it was maybe it was one last pagan revival, one last attempt. It's all
Rebellion
fantasy, though. We don't really
against the
know.
church.
However, I do think Leland's book is actually a real thing. I really, really do. And a lot of people don't.
And that's a very rare.
But I do.
Yeah. He's taken a stand.
Oh, just, is it my desire, or is it because... But I've read so much information that actually points to it. And the fact that the church mentions Diana with witches long before they mentioned the devil.
They do.
There's a lot of reasons why, and there are lots of myths you could go on. Actually, no one's actually scratched the surface of this. Anyway, I think that the modern use of the word strega is kind of being used. The problem is you've got a lot of people who are claiming to come from strega families, and they're claiming that that it's this thing. Strega, once again, it's just a different word. Some people equate that to demon. Sometimes it's not actually associated with witch, it's associated with demon. So I'm not a linguist, but...
Yeah, and it's weird in Italian. It goes back and forth.
Yeah. Do I think that if there were... The church equated the cult of Diana with witchcraft.
Very much so.
Leland equated the church of Diana with witchcraft. Diana was worshipped in lots of places, including Britain. So, my point is that there's an English reason why she could have been, if she was worshipped in Britain, there's an English language reason why she might have been associated with witches. And we don't really know how popular what cult was at these times.
She just, like you said, she absorbed a lot. So in the witch trials, they would call sabbats the Ludi Diani, the games of Diana.
In the modern context,
she just absorbed it all.
Most of the authors that wrote about Italian witchcraft, or most of the people who are proclaiming it, I think that outside of, I'm going to take a strong stance here, outside of Leland, I think almost all of them were fraudulent.
Their claims to historical lineage.
And I do believe that Leland's work influenced Gardner and Alexandrian witchcraft without a doubt.
Massively.
And I do think his work is real. And so my opinion, if you want to practice Italian witchcraft, that is the book. There isn't another book. Because all those other books borrow from Gardnerian or Alexandrian witchcraft. And Leland. They're doing the same thing that everyone else does. And then they're trying to make it older. Leland's work is pre-Gardnerian.
Yeah,
it is one of the few examples.
Published?
1800s, I believe.
Late
he was in the Civil War.
Yeah,
and he was a folklorist. The reason why I believe his work is not only because like all occultists, I believe that, first of all, his Charge of the Goddess in that book has become a sacred text globally. So I believe that, that his work was legitimate, or parts of it were legitimate.
Because
and he had no ulterior motive. He was just a folklorist. He was in the Civil War. He was American. He wasn't trying to be a witch. He didn't make a bunch of money off of it. He was just researching folklore. Now, I'm sure some of it's folklore, isn't it?
It is. I agree with that. Someone hit done answering because of the Italian one. But we have two more questions. One of them's in chat that I'm just going to answer because it was to me. And then we've got one that I really like from Katina. Somebody asked me about Murray versus another particular anthropologist or writer. Here's what I'm going to say. I love Murray in a sense. I agree with Brian that there is a thread through her that I think is super important. I do think she makes massive problematic errors, and not just things like saying Joan of Arc is a witch.
No, but those were the ones people...
Yeah, I think there are much better authors now to go to. We have much more access to source documents than she did.
But she still has a foundational
She's
work.
very foundational, yes, but I still would rather read Ginsberg. I'd rather read...
Well, I agree.
I'd rather read people that are actually...
They also had access to information she didn't have.
Exactly, that's what I just said, that she has that, she had a deficit in that sense. But so that's what I would say to your, Bex, when you're asking about her versus this person or that
I want
person.
to make a comment of this if I get a chance.
I think they're all a little problematic, to be honest, at her time period. And I think the more modern authors that have access to the original source documents are a little bit better. So before you do that one, we do have a really good question, because keeping it in the track of talking about
I'll let
Leland.
you take this one.
Yeah, I'll take this one. Katina says, what about the White Goddess? If you don't know, people who are watching, the White Goddess is Robert Graves, who also wrote I, Claudius, and he was a poet, a war poet, and many other things. The White Goddess, I think, was massively influential. I think if I had to pick the 3 books that were the most influential to craft elders that are not actual pagan text in the sense of Neoplatonist tradition or whatever, but are just literature, it would be The Gospel of the Witches by Leland, Robert Graves' The White Goddess, and The Golden Bough by Fraser.
Wow.
Those are the
Some of
most
these are
quintessential
influential
sort of
to occultists in general.
in general, yeah. But the White Goddess is massive. I mean,
the White Goddess and the Golden Bow were accepted by many occultists.
Yeah, I think they're so. Yes, I think it's extraordinarily
Druids, the
influential.
OTO, all of it.
I think the poetry in it, the concept of a divine feminine that is almost monotheistic in a way. I think the concept of the Mother Maiden Crone that's present. I think all of that comes. A lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it comes from Graves, and the love of poetry. I think that's the reason our liturgy is so poetic. Comes from people like Leland and people like Graves. So yeah, I think he was very, very influential. Robert Graves.
And actually, the Golden Bow influenced the White Goddess.
Yeah, the Golden Bough was massive.
So, I mean,
Fraser was the whole concept of the sacrificial king.
Yeah.
It all comes from Fraser.
That
was
was
the precursor to people like Campbell and whatnot. Very important. So that's a good
someone
question.
said something here, and it wasn't really a question, but I make a comment, and so I don't want to name the name because it wasn't really a question. But Christian witches are mixing pantheons, which can be problematic. I want to address that very quickly because that's not my objection to Christian witches. My objection to Christian witches is the fact that they're mixing 2 different belief systems. Witchcraft has always mixed pantheons. Listen to the words of the Great Mother, who was called of old amongst men, Artemis, Astarte, Dione, Melusine, Aphrodite, many other names.
Yeah.
We've always mixed pantheons. We're a mystery cult. We are not a cultural religion. We're not trying to be Celts. We're not trying to be Saxons. We're not trying to be Norse. We're not trying to be... So mixing pantheons is actually not my issue. My issue is mixing belief, which is the same reason why I have a strong stance about the fact that one cannot be Gaudianarian and Alexandrian at the same time. We're kissing cousins. We're literally almost the same cult, and we're definitely the same religion, and we're definitely from the same, the Vatican might have divided us off into different orders, but we're definitely really, really close to each other.
Yeah, we're the same religion.
However, there are certain beliefs that are just so contrary. It's like you have to pick a side. It's like saying you could be, for all my nerds out there, a Sith and a Jedi.
Which is what they're doing in the new movies.
Cannot do.
Maybe.
Well, no, there's certain orders that were separate as well.
You're not going to go down Star Wars.
You can't. Yeah, exactly. You cannot be, something contrary. So Christianity, by its very virtue, says you cannot. There could be no other gods before me. Let's even beyond that, because some people say it being poisoner. It's very clear that you're not supposed to worship other gods.
No.
And it's very clear there's not a goddess. Like, it's very clear. There are mystical sects of Christianity, obviously, it's different.
Yeah, but they're not Orthodox Christianity.
And magic is the most problematic thing. Everything in Christianity comes from God. You're not supposed to be able to perform miracles without God. Witchcraft is very much about your own personal power, and your relationship with the divine is a co-creative aspect. So it's just, they don't mesh philosophically. I am completely of the mind that witchcraft is a scavenger religion. I think we always have mixed pantheons, and
I think his comment though is going to come up when we do our episode on the gods a little bit deeper. We're not hard polytheists. I've never met an initiate, Gardnerian or Alexandrian, who's a hard.
Hopefully
polytheist.
that answered that comment question.
We don't believe the gods are actual, separate, completely different entities. We believe in a very different view of the divine.
Yes, we're here's
very
a
Neoplatonic.
big newsflash for everyone. Initiates are monotheists.
We are.
We do obviously see God as God and Goddess, but in the end of the day, we realize they all come from the same source of power.
We have a very different view.
If you want to take that into Kabbalah, be Kether. Everything comes from Kether. Right?
Yeah, there's anything above that.
And it divides into ways we can see it. we as human beings, and the Bible talks about this, you can't look at God without becoming blind. Cannot directly look at the face of God.
The veiled face of God. And all that, yeah.
So that's a cult, we would say, an occult knowledge coming through there. You can't look at the face of God, meaning you can't perceive it in its completeness. So we have to perceive it in different ways, which is actually a religious, a universal religious thing. You can find it in voodoo, you find it in witchcraft, you find it in Catholicism, really.
Hinduism.
So you find it in all of those things. So all in all, I think that people don't understand what it is we do.
No, and we're going to do a whole episode on the gods, which I think will clear up a lot about what people.
What is our next episode going to be? I
think we should do the gods.
The gods.
Gods and devils.
We did say we
devils
do
and
curses
gods
eventually too.
Let's do devils and gods. We'll clear up a lot of questions.
Just call it gods. The gods.
He takes everything.
The gods
from me.
of witchcraft.
He takes everything.
The gods
from me.
I have never taken anything from you yet.
That is a veiled threat if I've ever heard one. Wait, which one are you looking for?
This God doesn't need a new supreme. Needs a new rug.
Wasn't the best time to do that, but it was the best.
American Horror Story. Well,
anyway, we're going to say adieu for the evening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. It was really a bizarre topic, I suppose. But I want to leave you all with this. Listen to each other. Listen to the traditions of other people. You do not have to agree with them. You can hate their definitions. And you know what? It's okay to hate their definitions. But understand what people are trying to say. Do not try to change their vocabulary, because the reality of the situation is the only book we have to measure vocabulary is a dictionary, and within the occult community, it doesn't measure up.
And
right?
also, it's even based on usage, so screw it.
So, educate yourself to the history, make choices, and be willing to change your mind. But in the end of the day, we don't care if you call yourself a Christian witch. We don't care if you call yourself a green witch. We don't care what you call yourself. We know what we are, and we own that. And we, if we're having a conversation with you, we're going to try to recognize what you're doing. Unless you're interested in coming into our circle, it doesn't matter anyway.
No, it's all you.
If you're going to never practice with someone else, it doesn't matter anyway. We are all living in different pocket dimensions. And as we come out, what we can say is that witchcraft, or all magical expressions, warlock, wizard, magus, sorcerer, these are all expressions of people that are using magic. And the world right now could use a lot of magic.
It could.
So we do not disrespect any of
or
you
drugs.
or your labels. We just wanted to sort of address this because we think there's a lot of historical confusion, and we think that there's a lot of confusion about what initiates believe. And we do not claim to represent all initiates, because I've met initiates, especially in America, who love the word Wicca, and that's fine, because they're trying to own that as their label for initiation. The problem is they don't. They don't own it.
The cat's out of the bag.
They don't own it any more than we own the word witch.
We can't own that word.
You
can't really own words.
You can't unless you just can't.
You can't.
So it is what it is, and everyone has their own ideas. So till next week, I guess we're going to do the gods.
Yes, we're going to do the gods next. My favorite. Right?
Yes, the gods of witchcraft. Good night, everyone.
Good night, and enjoy.
There were covens in Europe. That's what they're called. The congregation. Covens in Europe, in America, and in Australia, and they have one right here. That whole bunch. The parties with the singing and the flute and the chanting. Those are esbats or sabbats or whatever they're called.
Don't get excited, huh?
Read what they do, Guy. They use blood in their rituals, and the blood